sin we did. When I was real little, well, around maybe 5 or 6, I was in summer camp. I saw a baby alligator, and my heart jumped. Not in fear, because of joy. I wanted that alligator. It's what I wanted. I had to figure it out. I'd be successful. I'd be happy all the days of my life if I had a baby alligator. I can still remember the feeling I had when I saw that baby alligator. So I asked them, I said, how much if I wanted to buy that? And the guy told me $10. I went home to my mother and asked her, and I cannot understand to this day, but she gave me $10. I have no idea. And a note to give, I have no idea. And I went into camp that day, and they told me the alligator had gone. Now, I think my mother gave me a note saying, you give that alligator to my son, I kill you. I think that's what it was, but when I was 11, I wanted a mini bike. That was so I did work. I worked the summer. I painted houses. I mowed lawns. I did all sorts of things. I got a paper route around everything. I ended up with about a few $100s, and I sacrificed for that. And I finally went to buy it. I said to my parents, I want to buy a mini bike. They said I don't think so. I couldn't buy except because they didn't want to have their son on a mini bike. But I remember how much I sacrificed for that. And how much when you want something, when you love something, you sacrifice for something. The Lord, He sacrificed Himself because He loved someone. I have friends who will ask, whatever it is I buy, how much did you pay for that? And no matter what I say, the next statement is, well, I could have gotten it for less. How much did you pay for that couch? $10. I could have gotten it for $7. Why didn't you call me? I said, well, how much did you pay for that Doritos? I got it for $1.50. I could have gotten it for $1.23. Why didn't you call me? I said, well, I would have, but there was no phone in the junk food aisle. Salvation is a price. We forget often what that means because it's freely given, but it is not free for God. It's free for us, but it's not free for God. It costs God a lot. We think, well, He's God. It's not a big deal for Him to do anything. He was going to rise anyway. People, not at all. What happened in Gethsemane 2,000 years ago? People are puzzled that He said, take this cup away from me, Father. Nevertheless, if it's possible, take this away because the suffering is so great. This is hell coming on me. This is eternity of punishment coming on me and separation from you, my Father. Take it away if it's possible, but if it's not possible, your will be done. He still said yes, but it tells you that it wasn't easy. It would be much, we think, well, what's the alternative? He says, well, hey, this is easy. I'm going to go to the cross. I'm God, no sweat. That's not it. That's the whole point. It's the equivalent of taking hell upon yourself, the judgment of God. It was costly even for God. It's not a no-sweat salvation. And many religions and even many teachings in, quote, Christianity offer that. Philosophies, mystical knowledge, or just, hey, here, know the formula, and you're going to get anything you want. That is not salvation. And that's certainly not God. It's a price paid with blood, sweat, and tears. Nothing was easy about it, about His love. It's the real thing. See, the cross teaches us that even this blood and sweat is holy when it's of God. There is a worldly striving based on self that says cease striving. But there's a Holy Spirit striving that comes from God. Many believers think that the Spirit-filled life is you live without it's just a flow effortlessly. You just float along the wind. Well, that's not quite it. If you have to strive for something, it's not the Spirit. No, it might be the Spirit. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is strive for what God has called you to. Toil. Fight the good fight. Overcoming sin. It's easy in the spirit, but sometimes it's hard in the flesh. Overcoming doesn't come without a fight. It cannot. Having any victory in your life cannot come without a fight. Standing for what is right when it's easy means nothing. But when it's hard, as in a culture that is in apostasy from God, if you know what I'm talking about. That is the time when it means something to God, when you stand for what's right, when it costs you. Fulfilling the Great Commission, the sick, preaching the gospel, overcoming fear. It's not, the Spirit-filled life has a flow to it, but it doesn't mean there's no striving. Abraham had to do a lot of striving to get to go on a journey his whole life to get out of Ur and get into the promised land. Joshua had a fight to take the promised land. David had a fight to against Goliath and much later. And Paul also, he strove with the gospel and day in and day out. And yet he was blessed, yet there was joy, but there's a good fight and there's a good race. And what our salvation tells us from the beginning is this is not a no-sweat God. You know, stores are filled with things, items, and they have prices next to them, tags. And because of the price, you cannot take that home with you unless you pay the price. You have all these things, but they are bound to the store unless you pay the price. And so in the same way, we are created with a purpose, but we are bound, unless we have God, there's sin and there's a price that has to be paid. If we're going to be set free, if we're going to fulfill our calling, there is a price. There is a price. The price is the mark of what's needed to redeem that item. In the same way, there's a price to sin, there's a price to failure, there's a price to addictions, a price to all the things we were into, maybe some are still into. But if the price is paid, you can be completely free, you're unbound. You know, all across the world, man senses that there's got to be a price. There's a price all across the world, even in every culture virtually, man offered sacrifices to the gods. The Babylonians offered sacrifices. The Greeks did. The Romans did. The Egyptians did. The Hindus do or have done. The Aztecs did. All these things, they knew there was something about a price. But when you look at Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, at the man on the cross, it is something so radically amazing that has no precedent in history. It's not man offering up a sacrifice to God. It's God paying a sacrifice for man. That's the difference between our faith and every other faith. Every other faith, it's a hand